Sean Hammond. We're at Summer NAMM in Nashville at the Third Power Amplification booth with Jamie Scott. Jamie, how are you?
I'm doing great. How you doing? Hey, PremierGuitar.com. Good to see you guys over here. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man. So we're in a really cool little soundproof booth, which is nice for our ears and to be able to hear this cool amp that Jamie has to show us today. It's the American Dream. Why don't you just start telling us about this?
Excellent. Thank you. The American Dream is two-channel amplifier sitting on our triangle-chambered switchback single 12 enclosure. Channel 2 is designed to sound like a 65 blackface. Channel 1 is designed to give you the sounds of a 62 brown face. And one of the things that we've done in the lab, we had the genuine articles. We also had a 59 Tweed. However, I'm most proud to say we never once opened those original amps and just patently copied anything that they had going on. What we did do was make sure that we were meeting the feel and the dynamics and the depth of those original amplifiers, such that a guitar player that plays on an American Dream is going to approach each channel and it's going to occur like they're seeing an old best friend that's been a long time, but you know what? The handshake's the same, the greeting, the dynamics, it's all there, the relationship's there, so that on a brown face deluxe, it's going to start to turn over and go into an overdrive sound. Right about 4 and 5 is where it'll start to do its thing. On a blackface, however, it's going to stay clean much longer into the throw of the knob, and so we made sure we met those things. We also made sure that the EQ performed familiar, but then we've gone ahead and done some enhancements, such as each channel has its own defeatable bright switch, and we have a global presence that sits across the entire amplifier, such that we can do a final polish to the high end that we're trying to do. And we've talked electronically, but we shouldn't miss the single 12 triangle chamber enclosure and the switchback function. And what the switchback function does is it allows us to either operate the amplifier in fully closed mode or open it up and get an open back performance. And so I'll play a little couple of riffs on the brown face channel.
Now, if I understand the amp correctly, unlike a lot of amps where you talk about, well, there's this channel with this voice and then another channel with a pretty different sounding voice, you'd think, oh, it's a channel switching amp, but this is not like that. If you wanted to switch between these, you would put like an AB box in front of it, so that keeps the circuitry pristine, and you don't, because sometimes in the channel switching amps you lose some of the high end or whatever with stuff.
Yeah, and the reason you do that in many channel switching designs, you've got an IC chip or a relay chip, and you're providing it a voltage telling it when to kick over to one path or the other, nonetheless you're always using that chip. So we have hundreds of dollars in transformers, tens, 20s, 30s, $100 plus in tubes, but we're letting a $3 or $2.50 IC chip decide what our signal path is going to be. So in this case, with this class of amplifier, we're not utilizing any chips. So yes, you would go via an AB box. You'd have maybe your Les Paul plugged into the blackface channel with the bright switch on, but you'd run your telly on the brown with the bright switch off if you wanted, or set your presence anywhere that really dials it in. Speaking of the blackface channel, let's go ahead and hear a couple of riffs on that.
Sounds great, man. Now, in addition to just how great the amp sounds, one of the remarkable things that we noticed when we were just standing outside waiting for you to finish up with the last person who was in here is I picked up the cab and I was like, whoa, it's so light. It must be just a dummy cab. There must, I didn't think the guts were even in there. But, it's not like it's, light as a feather like a little practice amp, but for the size of the cab, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I understand. And one of the specifications I had in the design was Okay, I wanted to look at what are the combos that are out there. There's combos out there that are as big, and there are combos out there that are quite a bit smaller. But one of the things I noticed is the smaller amplifiers, everything was bunched into that 50 to 65 pound amplifier, and we're coming in at about a 57 pound amp. So we're right in there as far as weight goes. We didn't want to have this crazy heavy amplifier, but what we're doing is by adding the dimension, the depth, we have a real nice depth. We have the two channels. We have the single 12 chamber, but the chamber inside is using a different thickness so that it still has a nice resonant characteristic, but and we're still benefiting by a full baffle. Okay, but what I mean by that is this entire front area is still at play with the speaker mounted to it. However, the chamber that the speaker sits in is the smaller triangle chamber. But what that allows us to get is my transformers and my output tubes are in a separate isolated chamber here, and my preamp tubes are in a separate isolated chamber over here, and all of the chassis is floating above the separate enclosure, which means we have no vibration generated by the speaker affecting our tubes, our filaments, anything associated with that. So we don't have the rattle associated with having the chassis sit right next to a speaker driver and just get beat up the whole time. We have a convection chamber here such that this vent is simply allowing air to draw into the power tubes, and I have it inside with reflective surfaces that will actually create a swirl, and this will self-ventilate.
So that's not like a mechanical fan like in some amps. That's just sort of some magic you figured out because you've got an engineering degree.
I don't have an engineering degree. I'm like a Steven Tyler, fake it till you make it. You just keep going, and you don't stop until you get it right. And so, yeah, by moving a reflective surface will counter or send the heat somewhere else. And so because I've got the triangle chamber, if I put a reflective surface here and here, it does this and wants to go that way, and heat rises and it creates a swirl and it's pulling cool air in.
It's just pumping it naturally. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, before we forget, what sort of speaker do you have in this?
We heard today an Alnico Gold by Celestion, and I really love that. We have a standard model of this amplifier that will ship with a Vintage 30. Very nice, great sounding speaker in its own right, and I use it in most of my other enclosures. But for this particular class of amplifier, being that it's really calling up, we call it the American Dream, and that conjures, the amplifiers that we're inspired by here. That Alnico, you just can't replace it with a ceramic. It really takes it to a whole other place.
Okay, so Jamie, you said that the amp comes with there's a power switch mode from 22 watts down to 10 watts, right?
Yes.
Why don't we hear what that sounds like?
Okay. So we're going to go through the brown channel. We're down at 10 watts, and we'll do that intro riff that we did earlier.
Sounds great, man. So I'm sure there's a lot more that people could learn about this. Where can they go to find out?
You can find out more about Third Power at thirdpoweramps.com.
All right, thanks, man. We appreciate you showing us the amp. It sounds really good. I'm Sean Hammond, and you're watching PremierGuitar.com.